Gate 14 podcast presented by FanDuel Canada. Download FanDuel Canada today. Bet on baseball, cricket, whatever you want to bet on. We are joined by a very special guest. Some may call it the white whale of the media industry for Gate 14, Ben Nicholson-Smith.
It is great to be here. Thanks for having me on, guys.
We didn't think this was ever going to happen.
We didn't.
Thank you to Keegan for pushing this one across, but we're happy to have you.
Yeah, well, when I heard from Keegan that you guys were interested in chatting, I thought, you know what, let's talk some baseball. So it's good to be here.
This one's going to do well, man. You are probably, besides Dan Schulman, Buck Martinez, the most requested guest we get on the show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, those guys are absolute legends and have tons of stories to tell, but I'll do what I can.
Yeah, so the reason why we wanted you on, and you become a Gate 14 guy because you've been crediting me, I'd love to know how, do you know, because Avery wanted to ask you this, do you know when I break something? Like, did you already know it happened? Or do I come out and break it?
We want to discredit, because I think you sit on a lot of scoops that it's like, I can't give up.
So I'm thinking of the most recent example that I can think of, which was the Ernie Clement ARB number. And you completely broke that news to me. Like, I did not know that was happening. And then once I saw that, then I go, okay, I have to try to verify this. And, just as I would if anyone else breaks it. And I was able to verify it, and then I credited you guys. So that's kind of how that unfolded. So you did break the news to me in that instance. I can't. I'm. If you remind me of your other scoops, then maybe I'll
like the call ups. I do like Schneider call up, Barger. I mean, there's been a lot.
Barger, right? That was last April. Yeah. No, you broke that news to me as well.
So the thing is the Ernie Clement thing came directly from him. So I mean, and I had people tweeting at me like, you don't know what you're talking about. Again, they like to get me mad on Twitter, so that you have been saving my ass a lot of the time, so I do want to thank you on that for crediting me.
Look, I honestly think that if anyone gets something right, I think they deserve credit, and if anyone's out there and I haven't credited them, then I apologize. I want to credit people. I think everyone does in this industry. I know, because I've been lucky enough to break a few things, that it's hard to break something, and if you break it, you want the credit. So, next time you guys get something, I of course want to credit whoever gets it.
Well, I've retired from the game, so I
right.
retired.
He says that every time. People like say on Twitter that you sit on scoops that the team's not allowed to give out. Do you actually have to do that, or is that just a fake thing people make up?
So can you explain this to me in a bit more detail?
So they think you have the information already. Oh. The team somehow or someone
tells you not to do it.
Someone tells you not to give it out.
Oh man, no. Yeah, no.
That'd be kind of crazy.
It seems crazy when people say it.
I mean, I wish that would be kind of fun to have all this information about what is going to happen and just be sitting there with all of this knowledge. But no, if a lot of the time in the off season it's me and Shai who are working on this stuff, and we're trying to confirm it. We're trying to basically just get every detail that we possibly can. So we might be talking to certain agents, certain people within front offices, just different people around the game. And the moment that is verified from enough sources that are close enough to the top to actually know, then we go with that. So yeah, certainly not sitting here on scoops. I think that would be kind of a disservice to fans if I had something that I knew there was something going down and I just didn't say it. Certainly there are cases where maybe something's a bit more gossipy or opinion and that's told, off the record. Of course, I would want to respect that from someone who tells me stuff off the record, but it wouldn't be like, hey, we have this, massive, massive, massive deal done and I'm just sitting on it.
Yeah.
Do you think the Toronto Blue Jays front office is kind of pissed off at me at the fact that I'm breaking shit? Do you think they're like, what the fuck is this podcaster breaking all these call-ups? Because, again, we're close to a lot of guys in the team, so a lot of the times they let me break it first. But I truly do wonder if the guys in the front office are like, how the fuck does Johnny Junta keep getting this shit?
They might wonder. Yeah. I suspect that the thought has crossed some people's minds. I don't think that anyone would be pissed about it. Yeah. I think that, talking to GMs, executives, whatever the case, my sense is that people are pissed when something comes out that's wrong or that's fake. And then it's just a nuisance for them because they have to answer questions because, if something false comes out, I might still text that person behind the scenes and say, hey, this is out there. Is there anything going on? Now their day's been interrupted. So they're probably more inclined to get annoyed with something that's false than something that's actually true. And it's okay, if that's a fact that's Ernie Clement's ARB number, then there's no reason for anyone to be mad.
Fair.
The fake sources game has taken over Blue Jays Twitter the last 2 years. Are you seeing every single fake tweet and then checking it, or are you able to kind of take the BS away from when you see a Winnie the Pooh profile picture? No shot, but
Shots fired.
Yeah,
We're good with love source.
Okay. It's changed a lot, right? Like, I feel like this has gone, it's kind of spun out in a different direction than where it was even a few years ago. Yeah, like I see a lot of it, and I try to just use a common sense filter first and foremost, where I'm like, is this even possible? Is this even believable? And then from there, if it passes a common sense filter, then I sometimes will reach out to people. A lot of the time that might start with, I try not to go on my For You page on Twitter.
good call.
Yeah.
Great call.
But sometimes I'll see something and it's like, you guys know how, I'm sure everyone watching knows how it is. Like, there's so much stuff out there. So I'll see that, then I put it through the kind of common sense filter. Then maybe I'll be talking to Shai on the phone. We'll be like, does this make any sense? We'll kind of talk it through. We'll bounce it off some people that we trust. And then eventually, I'm not just going to text Ross Atkins every time that there's someone with a random profile picture has a rumor. I got to be discerning with those things, of course. But at a certain point, you got to check it out. You got to try to verify.
Fair. And I have a question for you, maybe some advice. So as Gate 14 continues to get bigger, I get called the Rogers shill a lot. People say we're on the Rogers payroll because we're not critical enough of the team because we're friends with the players and the team. How did you, because I'm assuming you get it a pretty decent amount as well. How do you deal with the trolls that call you a Rogers shill?
Man, we could do a whole podcast on how to deal with the trolls. I want advice. Anyone who knows, anyone who's figured out.
We don't handle it.
Well, I don't handle it well specifically, but yeah.
So, what's your current best practices and how's that working out?
Well, I try to just body them.
Okay.
So we've actually kind of just given into it. So I say they pay us $70,000 an episode. Yeah. Rogers pays us that. So some people believe it, which is still crazy. But yeah, it's just the Rogers shill comments, they get to me.
Yeah.
Because I think we're fairly critical of the team. Last year I was pretty critical, but again, it's it's hard for us when you hang out with the players as much as we do to just rip into guys that you were just having dinner with, So it's it's a weird mix.
Well, and if you guys are having dinner with these players and getting to know them, obviously, we've seen the interviews. Clearly, you guys have a rapport there that's real. So, you're going to see that these guys are human beings who are trying hard, right? So if Bowden Francis gives up a 7 spot to the Red Sox, we know it's not for lack of effort. Yeah. He's trying.
Yeah.
And so, that applies up and down the organization. There's no one in the Blue Jays organization that doesn't want to win that I've come across. They all want to win. Even, people of course, Ross Atkins wants to win. He spent a year of his life or a decade of his life being the GM of this team. He wants to win. It just isn't working out. So, yeah, I honestly don't know. I would welcome tips and pointers on how to handle trolls. I don't know. I think that I can relate to you on that question, though, because it's something that, I think that anyone faces. Yeah.
Are you reading every single one of your mentions?
No.
That's a good.
You close a lot
that's an awesome
Yes.
start.
That's what I do.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So for mentions, I know what happened in Baltimore. I'm not sure exactly when, but there was one point that I think I was reading off my mentions to one of the Jays PR people, and then this individual said, "Why do you have this on still?" And I didn't have an answer. I didn't have an answer as to why I was looking at every single mention, because at that point, I got a lot of mentions. I probably still do. I just don't see them. So then I turned it on so that only people I follow
can
then
respond.
Yeah, anyone can respond, and I don't block people ever, but only people who I follow I will see when I go to my page.
That's very smart. Is there a guy on the team that is reading all of your work, and when you go into the clubhouse after you've written something that's critical and fair, pretty much, that they'll say, "Hey, that was right," or "I didn't like that"?
Avery came a victim to this by Chris Bassett.
Interesting.
Yeah, we talked about
It's good to get checked
So,
sometimes, though.
Yeah, like we've mentioned on the podcast, obviously Chris Bassett's our guy. Avery talked about Chris Bassett on the podcast giving up hard contact last year.
Okay.
Chris Bassett sent us a voice note in our group chat with him,
Interesting.
pretty much ripping it. He's
He's like, "That was the only thing I didn't do was give up hard contact."
So yeah, do
Really?
you have players like that read your stuff all the time?
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, not to that level of dedication.
We knew he was getting in his car and driving to Florida, so the first thing he turned on was that, and then he got mad at me, which is good. Yeah.
I will say I have received 0 voice notes from players ever. So that's No, for various things, like I've heard from players via text, via phone call, via, conversation in person over the years at different points in time. Yeah, I would say that the culture, though, for the most part, at least in my experience of things, is they kind of, I'm around them all the time, and there's a understanding that we are in the same space, but it's their space, and I'm not sitting there trying to say like, hey, like, what did you think of my article? Because, if they have something to say to me, they certainly can, and sometimes have. But for the most part, I'm not seeking their like direct validation and approval. And I trust that if they have something to say to me, they can. But I don't really have a lot of like, it's been a while since a player mentioned an article to me.
Really?
Yeah. They don't really comment on that regularly.
Have you ever had a player, you don't have to say this, like the actual player, but have you ever had a player hate you before? Like make it very clear, it's like, I fucking hate Ben Nicholson-Smith.
Man, if they've tried to do that, they haven't succeeded.
Okay.
So the message hasn't quite got through to me.
Okay.
So I'm going to say no, but I mean, maybe they did silently hate me. That's possible.
So we have a question from our intern, Callum, sports
here,
media
Callum.
guy. He came up with a good question.
That's a really good question, by the way.
Nice.
You can stand up. Just sit on the couch.
Okay, I'll sit on the couch next to Ben.
Get in there.
Hey Ben, how's it going? Yeah, I was just wondering what story you've written as a Jays writer that's like brought you the most like inner peace or like
Fulfilling.
Fulfillment. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Great question. Great question. I wish I was more prepared for this because I read a lot of articles and a lot of them are like, notebook, Bassett feeling good, and it's not the most exciting thing. Like, trying to think. Oh, okay. So like this time last year, I wrote a piece about these minor league knuckleballers. So that was pretty cool. They were working with R.A. Dickey. That was pretty fun. I don't know if I want to say that's like number one. My number one this spring would be Alan Roden, his kind of work trying to make this team, and the fact that this guy has like studied astrophysics, which is just wild.
We were reading that earlier.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
So I don't know. I'll give that one some thought though. It's a great question.
Great,
Yeah.
Callum, great job.
Good job. I guess we could talk about Alan Roden. I'm a known prospect hater. It's my kind of shtick on the podcast. I want them all traded.
Yeah.
What are the realistic chances? Like, what is the chances that Alan Roden actually does end up making the Toronto Blue Jays this season, do you think?
I think at some point this season, I think we're seeing him. Yeah, for sure. Opening day, I don't think so. But I could see a scenario and like, this might sound like super optimistic, and this might invite comments from our, fellow
shills.
haters here, which is fine. I understand that's going to be part of it. But I think that I could see a world where Alan Roden plays like 80 games, has like a 780 OPS, hits 8 homers, 15 doubles. Like I could actually see that. I feel like Alan Roden's like actually got a chance to be a good major league hitter.
Is the OBP going to be real in his first stint? Because when you get those minor league guys, I just say just cut their walk rate in half, pretty much.
Yeah, I think that he's not going to swing at a lot of balls, so that'll help him. But I think pitchers will attack him, and it could be like David Schneider, where at a certain point, pitchers found ways to get him out in the strike zone. So if you come at David Schneider with heat in the strike zone, it's going to be really tough for him at the top of the zone. So if Alan Roden has something like that in his profile, I think pitchers will figure it out pretty fast.
Why do they love that style of prospect so much? And does that make you, would you like to see a different style of prospect at some point?
Well, so I was in Bradenton the other day and saw Arjun Namala and Alan Roden, actually. They both homered. So Arjun Namala, 19 years old. Have you guys spent a lot of time around this guy?
Never.
He's not a Gate 14 guest
he's
as of
still
yet.
too young.
Yeah, he's young. He's very poised. I was so impressed. I hadn't really been around him very much. Kind of watched him from afar, like defensively, and kind of gotten a sense of this guy just kind of moves really easily. And, this is a guy who has some upside. Then you see him, hit a home run off a major league pitcher. And talking to him afterwards, like he just has such a really calm, kind of grounded disposition that, man, me at 19, like, no way.
Yeah.
Like to be talking to the media, I would have been like not calm, So he was just seemed to have a good kind of headspace. And I think this is a guy who has a different level of upside. So I think Namala is a good counterpoint to that. Roden, you take him in the 3rd round. I'm fine with that in the 3rd round. I have lots of thoughts on the draft, many of which are just like not founded in like data or reality necessarily. But I think you got to pick guys that you think are going to be big leaguers. If you can get a big leaguer in the 3rd round and that guy's like, you know, a 2-WAR outfielder, then absolutely go for it. And I think Alan Roden can do that.
Are you surprised there was no moves from the logjam of middle guys, or do you think we're going to be in the Espinal end of camp territory move if they make one?
Yeah, like as far as like trading away another guy.
Yeah.
I guess a little surprised. I think that you get to a point where, where are they all going to play? I guess AAA for the most part.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing to have good position player depth at AAA. I don't know about you guys, but to me, I look at this team and I think that they actually have solid position player depth. I think that they're going to score runs this year. I worry more about the pitching.
Yeah. The AAA starting pitching depth is Easton Lucas now, right?
Well, exactly. Eric Lauer isn't here yet. Jake Bloss keeps getting hit hard, like no command. This guy, to me, is not ready for the major leagues right now. And that can change fast. He's a prospect. I'm not writing him off forever. But to your point, sometimes these prospects, like they're not quite there. And it takes time and patience. And so, to me, Bloss isn't ready. That's a hole for them behind the big 5.
And is Yariel, because everyone thinks he's the bullpen guy, and he just hasn't been in the zone at all spring. It's 2 outings, but is that, it's obviously the next man up, it seems like on paper, but hey, could it struggle like it was last year too with him?
I mean, that could definitely happen. Yariel, I think, is kind of well suited to that bullpen role. So yeah, we'll see. But how high are you guys on Yariel?
I think he's electric, man. We talked about this with Keegan.
Dinner.
Yeah, we went out for dinner with Gossman, and Gossman told us that Yariel has the best stuff in the York, like the nastiest stuff in the York. He just has to obviously pound the zone, but I think Yariel, when he is on, man, he is a treat. We got to see it a couple times last year, but this spring he has not been in the zone like at all.
Yeah. So when you guys, when you're getting to know these players and you're kind of going out for dinners with them, you're having them over here, what are you taking away from these kind of friendships, interactions, relationships that you have that maybe you guys didn't know, whatever it is, a few years ago?
I think how much
they're normal.
They're just normal.
The most normal people on the planet.
Yeah.
They just happen to show up to work and do something totally different. They like going out with the guys, spending time together.
Yeah, like to have a couple beers, like just shoot the shit. Like when we hang out with like Ernie Davis and Lopes, it feels like I'm just with my high school buddies. To be honest, like that's how they kind of treat it as well. So. We just have different relationships with different guys. Like obviously with Gossman, we're not going to talk about like girls and shit like that with him, but like it's just a different relationship with those guys. But each guy is different. Like Bowden loves ball. Like Bowden loves ball, but he also like is very normal because he was drafted late and wasn't really like a high prospect. So
very normal.
It's very different with like different guys and stuff like that. But yeah, the Gossmans of the world are very, very interesting away from the baseball field for sure. Yeah.
Is the conversation like, is it really like Blue Jays intensive, or do you guys just kind of end up talking about everything?
No, I mean, this guy was talking about having cars getting stolen out of his driveway with Gossman for like an hour.
Our friend Curtis also tried to teach them a new pitch. He's never played baseball in his life.
So yeah, it's a lot of that. Like I don't know. Yeah, they're just so normal, and that's again like we talked about in the car after about the Bowden interview yesterday or 2 days ago. It's like how can we go with these guys now? You know what I'm saying? It's like Bowden stayed an hour after the podcast, just shot the shit with us, like just had a couple drinks to talk to us, and it's like, how the fuck am I supposed to like critique him? You know? But they want us to critique him. That's the one thing that Bassett always says to us is like, if I'm bad, like I'm not gonna get hurt feelings if you guys like not talk shit, but like critique me. So it is good that they like to be critiqued and they won't like get mad.
And I think that that's like the nature of this industry. Is it's such a clear. We get so many clear results, right? There's a win or there's a loss. There's someone who's scoring runs, someone who's allowing runs. And so I think that from that standpoint, it actually, like sometimes the criticism, you can be pretty critical and pretty fair at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to be, at least the way I kind of frame it to myself is like, if the Blue Jays finish in last place in the East and they lose 88 games, that's a bad season.
Yeah.
And you can, like, it's just a fact. And it seems like maybe those guys view it the same way.
Yeah. So I want to go to some extension talk, but not someone we always talk about. Do you think the team would try and get a Kirk deal done earlier?
He's so good.
So they don't have to worry about the exact position they've put themselves in with the other ones?
Yeah. I mean, Kirk, too, low-key, is the most important player on this team. I mean, Vladdy is, but Kirk is up there just as far as if they lose him and it's like Heineman Bethencourt. You know,
Oh my God, bro.
The Heineman swinging at the ball that hit him.
Heineman is. I think he has 1 home run in his career.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, in like 112 games or
Yeah.
something. So anyway, I mean, it's a backup catcher. You're not expecting a ton of offense there, but they really need Kirk. So could they extend him? Yeah, I think that Kirk and Varsho are the 2 most logical extension candidates on this team. I think when you look at the history, it's really interesting because I think extensions have kind of gotten harder to do over time. And some executives think that it's like now harder than it was because Mark Shapiro, remembering him in the 90s coming up with John Hart, like that front office was actually incredible at getting extensions done. That was like one of the reasons that team was so successful with so many stars. Then you fast forward to Toronto, the only players they've extended for more than 2 years, as you guys know, Randall Grichuk and Jose Barrios. So it's kind of like, and that's in 10 years, right? Yeah. So it's kind of an opportunity that they've missed. And some organization, and again, I understand it's a different environment now than it was in the 90s when you could kind of throw $10 million and guys would be like, oh my goodness, like I'll take this, I'll take whatever. Yeah. Not going to happen anymore, especially with the names that they've had coming up through the system. But I think with Kirk, you need a catcher. And this is a guy who contributes on both sides of the ball. Really good player. I believe in him. And Varsho too. Like, I'm not saying a 7-year extension, but you know, Varsho, it might be tough because he's a Boris guy, but you know, this is a player I think that you should look at extending to.
Where are you at with the Shackins crowd? Like, I think the people that hate Ross Atkins, a lot of the time, it could be warranted based off of the playoff success, but at the end of the day, he's brought this team to the dance like 3 out of the last 4 years, I think it is, or was it 3 out of the last 5 years? Like
2 of the last 4 because 2021.
Oh, okay. I guess 2020. I was also
2020 they made the playoffs.
Yeah, 2020 made the playoffs. So it's like this is a team that has had success in regular season, which is a larger sample size than the playoffs. But I just don't know how I can chirp a GM or get mad at a GM who's been to the playoffs. Like, where are you at with that?
So are you guys? I'll answer that. I'm not trying to dodge your question.
Yeah.
So are you guys like sort of a little bit pro Atkins, at least relative
No,
to the?
We think he doesn't really lose a lot of moves that he makes, it seems.
Yes,
So-
and he hasn't made really any bad signings. Like the Brandon Belt signing that everyone ragged on, he was the second best hitter on the team. Like Kevin Kiermaier was really good his first year. Obviously, last year he wasn't great. IKF deal was great. It's like I would not be surprised if he got fired, but it's like he has had success here. You know,
and you know, you look at the offseason where they signed Robbie Ray to a 1-year deal, Simeon, Springer, like that's a home run. You get a 40 homer season out of Marcus Simeon and Cy Young season out of Robbie Ray. Clearly, they can make good moves, which I think sometimes people forget.
They do.
You know what I mean?
We have hockey brain a lot of the time.
And like I understand it, and like last year counts, and last year was horrible. Yeah. So not trying to say otherwise, but they can make good moves. For me, I look at the totality of where things are. And I think that right now, this is a team that's pretty decent. And they're like one breakout away. If Will Wagner goes out and has a 120 WRC plus, 20 bombs, or 35 doubles, whatever it is. If they have that and a healthy Scherzer, watch out. This team could be in the playoffs. Like they just need 1 or 2 things to go right, and then they're in there. Conversely, if they have 1 or 2 things go wrong and it's like Gosman slips going down the dugout steps, God forbid, then all of a sudden you're in a bad spot and they might be losing. So for Atkins, I look at the Major League team, which is decent, but coming off a horrible year. Last year was not acceptable. Then for a team that's spending as much as they did. And then I look at the farm system, which bottom third. So that's not good. And then I look at the kind of overall direction beyond this year, and I just have a lot of questions about that. So I acknowledge that Ross Atkins has made good moves before and has built good teams before. But when I look at this presently, I think there are a lot of questions. And I think ultimately he's going to face a ton of pressure this year for this team to either perform or, I mean, we heard the questions last year and they're only going to intensify if they
We don't have the prospect pool to do the 1-season turnaround like the Red Sox did, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, getting Garrett Crochet would be awesome. How good would he look in the Blue Jays uniform, right? That'd be incredible. But
what does a good season for George Springer look like this year? Because we have to move the goalposts a little bit, it seems like, right?
Yes.
What's your best case outcome for him? And what do you think? Have you seen anything this spring that gives you hope for
Do you have a
George
hit?
this year?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I just can't say I look at spring training stats
No,
that
I know.
much.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm leaving a game and I'm like, did they win today? I honestly don't know. So Springer, I'd say, I mean, if he hit 20 homers with a 110 WRC plus, like if he gives them a 2.5 WAR season, to
Plan
me,
the parade.
Yeah. Wouldn't that'd be pretty good?
I mean, that'd be pretty
Yeah,
good.
after the last 2 years, we just
Yeah.
see weight runs K plus just shoot down, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I would say that, but I actually think that almost the worst case with Springer is like if he kind of is slightly below average all year and he just stays slightly below average, because if he were to, they actually have the depth that if he were to have to miss a month in June, maybe Alan Roden's ready, maybe Lil Profito's ready, or Jonathan Clase. Like they actually have some guys that they could backfill there. But of course, the best case scenario is Springer's healthy and, hitting some big bombs.
I wanted to talk about Bo Bichette. We talked about this with Keegan, and I think the world of Bo Bichette. I think he's going to be an absolute freak this year. Do you think at some point this year, I asked this to Keegan as well, that fans are clinging on to Bo Bichette saying extend Bo because Vladdy, the expectation is so high for Vladdy, and Vladdy is going to ask for, 585, whatever it is. Like I think Bo Bichette is going to be the MVP of the team this year. I truly do.
Yeah, I could see it. I think we're going to see prime Bo, prime Vladdy. This is where, like, this season was supposed to be kind of different for the Jays. Like, it wasn't supposed to be, hey, like, hopefully they can make a wild card.
Yeah.
This was supposed to be, as you guys know, as I'm sure the listeners know, like, this was supposed to be everything coming together. Vladdy's 26, Bo's 27. Everything's kind of building toward this, like, crescendo of a season. Maybe that will still happen. We'll see. But for Bo and Vlad, I think these guys are dialed in. They're motivated. They're healthy. They have succeeded already at this level. Like, I think Vladdy's about to go on an 8-year run of just being a monster, which is why I thought they should have extended him. And I think Bo is going to be a monster this year, and we'll see where it leads. But, the fans, once he starts producing again, I'm sure some fans will want to see him extended, and I get that.
Avery talked about Bo getting the Adames deal. I think that's a little bit of a low ball. I think if Bo has a good year, I think he's going to get more than Willie Adames.
Yeah.
He's younger, right?
And it could be more like the Seager deal.
Yeah.
Like, I could see it getting, toward 300. I think, like, if he has more of a solid year, then maybe it is Adames, like Dansby Swanson territory, or it could be below that too. I mean, the question of how do teams think Bo will age?
Yeah.
That's like an interesting one to me, because I think teams will think that Vladdy is going to age really well when you look at his command of the strike zone and just like the raw power that he has, because you don't see a lot of 118s off the bat, and teams will be interested in that. But I don't know. Sometimes, like, I don't know if you guys ever find this, but I'm like, we're so close to it that, we see this a little bit differently than maybe, let's say the Colorado Rockies do, or the, Cincinnati Reds do when they're trying to splice this.
We're doing the Vladdy third base thing again. So I'm going to give you a hypothetical.
Yeah.
If he plays 60 games defensively at third base, it's not going to.
That's a lot of games.
Yeah. Okay. It's a hypothetical here for a reason. Does that help his value immensely, or are we done with the third base charade if he did it 60 games this year?
Does it help his free agent value?
Correct.
I don't think it impacts it. I think that Vladdy's position is hitter, and I think if he's a below average third baseman versus a pretty serviceable first baseman, I don't think the value is that different. I think that, especially now that the DH is in both leagues, he can go to any of the 30 teams. Every team has room for him. Even if, hypothetically, Alonso stays with the Mets could put him at DH for a year and figure that out. So I think Vladdy's market's going to be good. But same with Soto. Like, Soto's not a good defender.
He's not.
They put him in right field, and he does okay, but he's essentially not a good defensive player, and it's kind of similar to Vladdy. Their position is just hitter, just mash.
Yeah, the Vladdy talk is going to suck this year because no matter how good he does, you're going to always have that in the back of your mind, right? It's like the fans are not going to let us enjoy this with the Vladdy stuff, which sucks. But you did catch a little bit of heat when you said on Twitter, like just pay Vladdy or they should have extended him. When do you think was the right time for the Jays to do this? Because I made the argument in 2021 after a pretty good season, but not his MVP season. It would have made a little bit of sense to give him a type of extension to eat some of the RBers. When do you think was a perfect time in a perfect world to extend him?
Yeah, I think so. This is where, like, to me, it's less that there's one specific time that it had to happen, but it's more so that if you're the president, owner, GM of this team, you have an extended window, and maybe it's 2019, maybe it's 2022 or 24 or 25. You have an extended window, and to me, at some point in that window, if you believe in him, then it would make sense to do that. Now, I understand too, and I've talked to executives who have nothing to do with the Blue Jays and who are kind of viewing this neutrally, or at least as neutrally as you can. And they'll point out that, like, hey, offering a blank check to a player, the way I might have been sort of suggesting, like, not that I would say like total blank check because you're not going to give him Soto money, but if they had offered him $500 million, I would have said good deal. I would have said that's great.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat.
Yeah, like I just think he's that good of a hitter, and like this is a guy that you want to build around. But I understand too, and there is the perspective from some executives that you know what, it actually makes sense to kind of stay firm to your value, and part of me just hates that because it just feels it's so not fun, but. I understand there's some people who are charged with making decisions that are kind of more long term.
We should take more risks, is what.
That's what I was
going
to say.
Because they're pretty risk averse when they're everything.
Ross Hawkins doesn't really take risks. Like, I've never seen a move he's made where I'm like, oh fuck, like that's a Miles Straw. Right? I guess the Miles Straw one
that
probably
was a risky move, but, and I'm okay with that move
Miles Straw is a Twitter follower of mine, so I pump his tires all the time now. But I do think the Vladdy deal, if it was $585, I would have walked away from it and been like, oh fuck, that's a lot of money.
And I think it was less, but I don't know exactly where.
Yeah.
But yeah, and this is where it's so painful because like, who wants to sit here and say, yeah, the Blue Jays should be disciplined and they should say no to their franchise player when it's an amount of money that's honestly so hard to conceptualize. It's like, I think for anyone, it's just like, what, 540 versus 505? Like, it's so hard to conceptualize that. I can understand having a walk away, but I also just think this is a really special player. And in 2031, when he's hitting 38 homers, for somebody else, like that might sting.
I think that's going to sting the most if he does end up. I still think he's going to be a Blue Jay, man. Like, I don't see a world where another team pays him. Like, the Red Sox wouldn't pay Mookie. Again, we talk about it. It's different, like different times in their organization. But are the Mets going to take two players over $500 million? I doubt that as well. Like, I just think the Jays make way too much sense, and I think both sides are stubborn. Like, I think the $340 million offer that has been advertised or obviously tweeted out was a slap in the face. Like, that Vladdy is not a 340 over 10-year $1 million player. I'm in the range of like 450 to 500. I'd be comfortable anything in that range.
I think that's a reasonable range. Yeah. And again, I don't know exactly where things landed. Deferrals, opt-outs, all that stuff can impact it, obviously. But yeah, if it had been 480 over 12. I would have been sitting here saying that's a great deal.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen. So yeah, that's high stakes for them this year.
Are we dealing with a medical miracle in Dalton Varsho's shoulder right now?
He's ahead of schedule.
It seems insane that he's possibly going to play opening day, right?
That would be kind of sick.
Yeah, he's looking good too, hitting bombs. Yeah. Like, this is he's progressing pretty well.
And you think like, hey, if he can get his throwing down, it kind of clears everything up for the start of the season, right?
Yeah. It's funny. Like, normally around this time, I'm starting to like map out opening day roster projections, and I'm not sure how much you guys have done that, but I really haven't. Yeah. I don't know why. Like, I think that there's so many roles that are spoken for, and then there are a couple variables like Swanson. Sounds like he might have to start the season on the IL. Yeah. Like, we'll see on that one. And then obviously the bench will be partially dictated based on, Varsho's status. But otherwise, like, you're going to have a backup catcher. You're going to have, some sort of outfield depth behind that main group. Probably Nathan Lucas, I think, makes the team. But it's not something I've really, dived into yet.
I think Nathan Lucas is serviceable, to be honest. He was pretty good last year, to be honest. I just don't see a world like I've seen that they're trotting out Clase again today and giving him a lot of chances. I just haven't seen much from him. I think Nathan Lucas, I'm more comfortable seeing him start a game, and even Lopes, to be honest. We're a little bit biased at that, obviously, but I think I'm more comfortable with Nathan Lucas in center. But speaking about some of the guys, like obviously David Schneider struggled last year. Is there a world where he starts this season in AAA? Would you say there's a very high chance of that?
I think there's a chance.
Yeah.
I don't know how high it is. Like, it's so tricky because the Jays need a player like David Schneider, right? Someone who can mash against left-handed pitching. And then if it's Varsho, if it's Lucas, even like Jimenez, Wagner, like you have all these left-handed hitters that you might want to give some sort of a partial off day to. So this is where, toward the end of the offseason, I even wondered about like Tommy Pham, JD Martinez. I think JD Martinez probably would come to the Blue Jays. I don't know that the Blue Jays necessarily have that playing time where it makes sense, because you're not going to offer him like a 2 days a week on the bench job. But this is where David Schneider, like, he fits on this team. It's just, I don't know, and I'm not a scout when it comes to this stuff, but certainly we've all seen enough swing and miss against some of these really high octane fastballs where it's like, is the book out a little bit? And that's the concern.
The other one is Elvis. Do you think there's any chance with him?
I don't know how much of a chance there is, but I'll say that I am completely on board. If he's ready for opening day and if he makes their team better, because to me, like, I don't see the Jays making the playoffs with like a 4-game lead. They clinch on the Wednesday before I don't see that. Nor do I see the Blue Jays being eliminated 2 weeks before the season ends. I think it's going down to the wire.
That's so sick.
You know what I mean? I really think it is. I think it's those last 4 or 5 games.
I need it.
Brace ourselves already, right? And so if that's the case, one win in April where you're facing the Mets and Elvis takes some, whoever it is, like AJ Minter Yard, boom. Like, that is a win that can make a difference for you at the end of the season. So to me, you take the best team. And slightly different case with Clase because I just don't think he's fully ready. But if you think that Elvis is bad as ready, I would run with it.
That's a risk. That's one of the first risks I think they would take is putting him on the opening day lineup.
Yeah.
I think that would be one of the first risks. But I wanted to talk about a reliever that we've kind of come to start to love. Is Ryan Yarbrough, like, he's just on this team, right? Like,
I think so.
Yeah. I do not know how this dude gets guys out.
Yeah.
I do, like, he throws 80 poo. Like, I don't get it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's wild. It's really cool. I think that they also need that kind of bulk. And I actually think to get him in a minor league deal, that actually is kind of a good move by them. So I'm down for Yarbrough. I think that makes their team better.
Do you think there's any possible chance that he could be the guy to step in to get starts if someone goes out? Instead of Yari, if Yariel's high octane at the back of the pen and it's like they'll give him some leverage innings, maybe it's Ryan Yarbrough instead.
Maybe it has to be. Or maybe it's like bullpen games. And this is where I think that they could withstand one injury where, like, someone goes down, you have Yarbrough step in, maybe it's paired with, an opener or something. You're able to get some decent results. But if they had 2 injuries, not to get too like doomsday, but my brain works this way sometimes. If they had 2 injuries, the starting pitching staff, or like even that first stretch of games, they're in New York, Boston, and Baltimore for that first road trip.
My
right?
God.
And I think it's all in a row. So you're going to have rain delays.
Yeah.
You're going to have rain out. So what are you going to do? And this is where, again, like every game is going to matter for these guys. It's not going to be a comfortable season. They're going to be like on the edge of the wild card potentially for a while. I don't know what they're going to do.
Maybe we could get an awesome Ross Stripling like season before he
That was so sick when he came
We even
in.
had like Ryu the next year too, right? Where found a way to add some value in the rotation.
And then late in the season, they're going to have Manoah.
Forgot about that, yeah.
So this is where I think they kind of got to get to July 31st. Because the other thing is, and speaking of narratives around this team, like sometimes people think like the Jays are very predictable in some ways. And if they're in contention at July 31st, they 100% will add pitching. Like, not a question, they will do it. Now, will it work? Who knows? But they will add pitching. So you just have to get to July 31st. Then you have Manoah coming back. You're trading for someone. You're kind of in a position at that point where, okay, you can load up. But if you're at July 31st, you're 45 and 52, then you kind of have to listen on Vladdy and Bo. And that's just a heartbreaking. No one wants to be in that situation. The Jays least on that list. They do not want to have to trade Vladdy and Bo. But I think at a certain point, the standings tell a story.
Especially after Ross has said he's going nowhere, which, again, you want to be able to negotiate with a guy throughout an entire season and not miss out on him after you trade him. So that's my thing. But this is more of like a reporter question. So you covering the team, has it taken away you becoming a fan of them? Like, is it hard? Because I get nervous for every single game. If you see the live streams, I live and die with this team. That's my life. Like, you covering them, does it like take away the fandom of it?
Yeah. I think that for sure. I think I'm very tied to the Blue Jays. So I'm never going to pretend. I mean, sometimes you'll hear reporters where they're like, I just don't care. And I'm totally neutral. And for me, it is my life as well, right? So I can't be totally neutral. It affects where I go. It affects where I spend my day. Like if they're in the playoffs, guess I'm on the road in October.
Yeah.
If they don't make the playoffs, maybe I'm, watching Vanderpump Rules at home and I'm just chilling. So it's a huge impact on my life. Plus, I am friends with so many Jays fans. It's a huge part of our city. It's a huge part of the community in Canada and in Toronto. So I'm never going to just sit here and say, like, I don't care whether they win or lose. Like, it's, even as you guys know, like, the whole conversation around the team, it can veer so toxic. And then, whether you turn your replies off or not, that impacts the whole overall thing too. So, yeah, when they're good, like, you guys remember 15, 16, the whole conversation around the team was like ecstatic at that time.
It's just so much more fun, man. Like we stopped doing live streams last year because, like, one, not many people would show up anymore as they usually do, and two, it's like, man, I can't pretend to care about a win against the Angels in August. It's like, who gives a fuck? It's like, it's a little tough, man. I'm really hoping they're good this year, man.
Do you like baseball as the sport more or less than when you started?
I would say more. Yeah, I love baseball. Yeah. Like, to me, even if, obviously the Blue Jays are the team that I follow most closely by far. And I have so much history there. And I know people within the organization, of course. But even if somehow the Blue Jays just took like a sabbatical for a year, I would still be so dialed in on Major League Baseball. Like, I would be obsessed with it.
Do you dabble in fantasy baseball at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Nice. Do you just play with buddies from home?
Yeah, for the most part. And it's, for me, that's a way to keep up on the news. Because I love knowing, like, what's going on with the Reds closer situation. Like, Alexis Diaz might lose his job. If I'm just sitting here in Dunedin, Florida, I'm probably not thinking about Alexis Diaz too much. But now I'm sort of like, all right, like, what's going on here?
How do you think this team is going to be this year? Truthfully, like, what is your gauge in terms of, like, how many wins this team is going to have? Do you think?
So, truthfully, I think that they're going to be pretty decent. I think that they're going to hover around 500, climb above it a little bit. At the deadline, I think that they're going to be in it, not like leading the division, but like in it. I think they're going to buy. I think they're going to trade Lázaro Estrada.
I don't know who that is.
Shout out to Arden Zwelling, my podcast co-host, because that was I don't want to take full credit for that idea, but that's he's going to be traded, Lázaro Estrada, potentially. That's not reporting. Please don't tweet that for anyone.
So
watching.
the score, don't make
please,
that bullshit ass article you clowns make.
So they're going to trade Estrada. They're going to trade some other dudes. Maybe it's Class A. Maybe it is low profito. We'll see. They're going to trade from their depth. They're going to add pitching because they're obviously going to need pitching. Position-wise, I think they're going to be okay, but we'll see. Maybe it's some sort of help. They'll be in it down the stretch, and then I think it's going to go down to the final weekend, and I don't know.
My mental health won't be able to take that, man.
I know
it'll be awesome to play meaningful games. I know we've had it the past couple of years, but that'll be good.
What do you guys think? What's your prediction?
I think
the win total was 76.5 wins. That's what the sports pick. And I was like, right away, I said, that's the worst.
Already bet it. Yeah.
So that's the worst line ever set. Then it got to 78.5, and I'm just like,
I don't think people realize how good Jeff Hoffman is going to be for this team. We've seen him a couple times. He's pitched both times we've went to the games. I think against Tigers he went 1 inning, 3 punchies. Like, I think people don't, and he's also on a fuck you tour, man. I mean, we talk about the guys that his arm or whatever didn't pass physicals. Like, man, I just think people are just undercutting how good Jeff Hoffman is going to be, man. I think this bullpen's going to be significantly better as well.
Oh, by far. I mean, they set the bar real low.
My negative WAR last year.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be better than that for sure. And then Hoffman, I think he's going to be really good. And it's different too. Like, if you're asking Jeff Hoffman to give you 5 innings 30 times, that's a whole different equation than, hey, you're hoping that he can give you 1 inning 60 times. Like, I don't know. It's so speculative to talk about his shoulder health. It's not my field, but if I had to guess, I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be a really good pickup.
Perfect world, your lineup construction for this baseball team. People love to do this on Twitter.
Yeah,
too.
they've been asking us
It's
to do
who's
this.
good. Yeah, what's the opening day lineup going to be? People love to ask, and I hate answering, so I'm going to ask you that.
All right,
question.
fair enough. Well, and then I pass it on to Schneider.
Exactly. Yeah,
That's just how it works. I guess
the leadoff spot is what people want to know, pretty much.
Yeah,
Who's the leadoff?
and because I would go Vlad Santander or maybe Bo Vlad Santander beyond that. Leadoff against righties, I would just start with Will Wagner, and against lefties, I would start with Springer. What do you guys
Springer
think?
in the leadoff, man.
Who would you go leadoff against lefties?
I really like. Again, I'm so against lefties. Man, I don't even know. I'm really Will Wagner pilled. Like, I just want him leading off for this team. But I guess like against lefties, Avery, who do you think?
I don't know. That's like, hey, is Arelvis gonna do this thing?
Arelvis leadoff would be fun.
That'd be
that would
fun.
be a risk.
Yeah,
like,
it's because they don't have an
Arelvis.
OBP guy and they don't have a speed guy who can mix in a little OB. Like in the perfect world, Jimenez could be the leadoff, but he doesn't get on base at all, right?
Yeah.
It's like let them party
Maybe
at
Bo.
the bottom of the lineup.
Exactly.
I think Bo will lead off against righties.
I'd be fine with
Or
that.
lefties, sorry, against lefties.
He can't. Yeah, he can't swing at a pitch out of the zone, hit into a double play if he's the leadoff guy,
Yeah.
right?
Bo Vlad Santander against lefties. Wagner, maybe Vlad Santander, or Wagner Bo Vlad Santander.
I am in love with the bottom of this lineup, man. I think this bottom of this lineup is going to be so fun. I think Jimenez is going to be so good. Maybe it's just the Twitter trolls getting to me because they all love Jimenez now. So I love Jimenez. I love Ernie. I think the bottom's going to be very fun.
What else are the Twitter trolls saying? Like,
Well,
what am
the
I
Twitter
missing?
They
trolls-
say a lot to
Okay.
Johnny.
I get it pretty bad.
That's how you
Like,
control. Those are nice messages.
yeah,
you're
no, it's
getting.
not really trolls. I guess it's like the
What are
Jimenez
the big
hype.
themes? Like, what are the big?
The
like,
big themes is like us calling us Roger Shills.
Okay.
Fire Atkins.
saying
Right.
we're not hard enough on the team.
Okay.
We've changed. It's like all that type of stuff, to be honest. Like
Right.
people
You,
just
you
wanna-
have to change if more people listen to you, right?
Yeah,
You're
it's
not
like
the same.
it's like
whether
we-
you want to or not, you're going to change. Like, time goes on. Like, you're not going to be the same statue you were 3 years ago.
No,
Do you think Ernie Clement starts third base opening day?
Yeah.
Good. Love to hear that.
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Ernie is like, I think people undermine, like they see the OPS plus, but he's a good base runner, fast as shit, very good defensively, and really good bat to ball, which is
Yes.
something that this team kind of lacks, But I think Ernie Clement at the bottom of the lineup, second lead, double leadoff, we'll call him. But
Yeah.
I think it goes Varsho, Jimenez, or Varsho. Who do you think it goes, Abe? Varsho, 7, Jimenez, Ernie?
That would be a
Like
good,
that kind of order
That'd be good.
for 7, 8, 9?
Well, you'd have Kirk up there.
Yeah, they
too.
might go Jimenez Kirk. They want Jimenez ahead of Kirk so Jimenez can steal.
So you don't have to hit the double play.
ball.
Yeah. And then that way, too, because if Kirk's ahead of Jimenez, then Jimenez can never steal when they both reach.
That's a fair. That's a very fair.
So
point.
you have to have Jimenez ahead of Kirk, then he can steal all
Yeah.
he wants, and then Kirk
That's
hits a
fair.
single, he scores.
Yeah, I think another underrated
Yeah.
signing that people haven't talked about is Jimmy Garcia being back, man.
Yeah.
The guy's pumping 98 right now, and
Yeah.
like March 5th.
No, exactly.
Yeah, it's March 2nd. I love Jimmy Garcia, but going back to what I think his team's going to win, I could see 85 wins, man. It just, Avery talked about this in the last podcast. It depends on how bad the White Sox are. If the White Sox are poverty like they were last year,
Whoa.
It's all the Central
we're,
teams.
we're gonna get
Whoa.
we're gonna get the Tigers, Twins. We're gonna get the Guardians again, all in the
Yeah.
wild card, and it's gonna clog it up. And the Jays are gonna have to beat actual good teams to make the playoffs.
That's actually kind of true, that the White Sox are low-key the factor in all
That's
of
the worst
this.
part of it. Yeah.
Man, and they're going to be horrible this year.
Hopefully we get some of their good guys in the second half and they find a way to win some games in the second half. Like the Montgomerys come up. You get Hagen Smith.
Yeah,
You
true.
get some of those guys. You're praying that they
Man.
find a way to be good
Even
in the
then.
second. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
We're all
that's-
thinking the same thing, unfortunately.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough. And the AL East is so good because you have Red Sox, Yankees, Orioles. In my opinion, those are 3 really good teams.
What's the Rays outlook for you?
To me, the Rays are just in a hard spot because it's kind of like the Jays in 21, where they're not playing at home. They're going to be playing, like it's already, well, today it's kind of cool, but there are days here in Florida now when it's hot. Imagine in July when they're playing outside 7 days in a row. They're going to be roasting. They have so much road travel that happens in the middle of the season.
Yeah, that's horrible.
I just think the Rays, unless they get out to like a 30-20 start, like if the Rays start 22 and 26, it's over for them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Can you give us a Nick Sandlin update? What's his deal?
Yes, he's pitching in the game today, Thursday. So
Perfect.
Schneider seemed excited. I just was there at Schneider's Avail. He seemed excited to see Sandlin. He likes him as a guy against lefties.
It's all the splitter guys they have against lefties, right?
To me, like, they do need a lefty. Like, that's one of the things where if they're in it at the deadline, they're getting a lefty because you have to. And ultimately, again, like, if they're going to be good, if they're actually going to make noise this year, they're going to have to win. Let's say it's game 161 is a must win. Game 162 is a must win. Then you're in the wild card series. You're playing like 4 must win games in a row. So Jimmy Garcia is getting big outs. Jeff Hoffman's getting big outs. You probably need a lefty who's getting big outs. And to me, no offense to Nick Sandlin, but you're not doing that like to try to get friggin' Jordan Alvarez in a wild card series. Like, you got to get a lefty in there.
Do you think the bullpen, we're going to figure out the home run to fly ball rate for the bullpen?
Brandon Little was bad last year with it. Yeah.
He gave up a home run to fly ball rate of 50% against righties last year.
That's like you in college.
Brandon Little did.
Wow.
It was something around that number. That was a YJ number.
Wow.
Yeah, everyone grounds out and he gave up home runs, but he's a good reliever, right?
Yeah. I mean, you've obviously, gone deeper into those numbers than I have, so I'll trust your judgment on that one.
It could be wrong, but it was really
it's right.
No,
it was really high.
That sounds right for sure. That's some pretty good insight. I think that for me, I'm intrigued by Ryan Burr to see what he can do. I don't know if he breaks with the team, but I think he'll get some shots.
Can Ryan Burr start in the minors? He has options.
I actually think he's out of options, but I would probably roster him because under the surface, his numbers late last year were pretty good.
Yeah, I think Eric Swanson is going to be unbelievable as well.
Yeah.
This bullpen is going to be night and day. Last year, they were the only negative WAR bullpen in baseball not named the Colorado Rockies.
It was so bad.
I think last year was one of the worst viewing Toronto Blue Jays experience I think I've had in a very long time, actually.
Well, I mean, you could say 2013 when they had that like really, the Reyes trade and the R.A. Dickey trade, and they just kind of floundered. But honestly, since then, I think last year was the roughest year, right?
Yeah.
The team was good in 2023 as well. I don't think it was that fun of a watch, to be honest, because it was the one run, okay, let's get through 6. We're up 2-1, and now you have to get every single out because we're not going to score another run.
And I think so much of it is expectations. And expectations have been high, and they should be high because they have these really good players. The front office has talked about wanting to win a World Series, and they're spending to the luxury tax. So, of course, expectations should be high. But for this season, I don't want to jinx anything here for all the Jays fans watching, of course. But like expectations are kind of low. So, if anything, if they're even decent for 4 months and the games matter and it's not just an abysmal season, even that would be an improvement.
Under promise, over deliver. This is
right.
my last question. So you eat, sleep, and breathe baseball. Keegan always talks about it. Keegan's wifed up. I believe he has a girlfriend. Is it impossible for a guy like you who legit loves the game as much as you do to be a wifed up guy?
Well, man, I could expand on that perhaps off mic. I'll tell you a fuller story.
Because if I were you, I would name drop. It's like, yeah, I work for the Blue Jays. It'd be kind of game over. From there. It's pretty easy.
Surprisingly, that's not a game over move. I look. I think that in this industry, it's a balancing act, and at times I've balanced that hopefully well, and at times I've probably not been that good at balancing that.
Avery's wifed up. I'm not, so that's probably why. I mean,
Balancing act between us too.
There we go. Fair. Yeah. I can't balance it. I love the Blue Jays. That's a pretty big problem.
Look,
of mine.
It's a huge because work-life balance is like. Well, what if in my downtime I still watch the Blue Jays? I'm not necessarily on the schedule, but I'm sitting at home. I got Dan and Buck on TV. That's a great experience. I love watching the Jays.
You're just hanging out with your buddies, except they're on the TV, right?
Well, exactly. Sometimes that's like a little. I know that voice. Like, where's that?
Fair.
But it's obviously baseball's insanely entertaining to me. So that's is that a problem? I don't know, but. I just find it so interesting and so entertaining that then I find myself, refreshing, certain like MLB trade rumors or something like 10 times. And then it's like, oh, the day just disappeared.
It's fair. Well, anyways, Ben, since you've come on this podcast, just know that I will defend you on Twitter until I die. Like, that's kind of what our thing is now. It's like people call me shills, whatever. I'll be a BNS shill. You're my guy. I appreciate what you've done in terms of crediting me with type of stuff, because it's kind of hard crediting a guy who pissed his pants when the Jays signed George Springer. But yeah, listen, Ben, we appreciate you, man.
You're the best.
Looking forward to your coverage this season, and man, hopefully we're enjoying covering the Toronto
Yeah,
Blue Jays this season, because
absolutely.
if we don't, I'll be in legit hell. to be honest.
Well, I totally hear that. Thank you guys for having me on, and congrats on all your success. And it's always good to talk baseball with people who really care about the sport. So appreciate it.
There it is.
All right, thank you guys for listening to this episode, and thank you to FanDuel Canada for sponsoring this episode. The best place to be betting on futures and just the best place to be betting on baseball if you're in Canada. Go to the link in the description and sign up today.